we're going to take you through our selections for running back for the upcoming season. First, Jeff is going to take you through his top 10, then I'm going to take you through mine. We're going to discuss our picks. Obviously, running back is the key position in fantasy football. It's the top point-producing position across the board. And if you screw up at picking running backs, you're pretty much done for your season right from draft day on. So, Jeff, do you want to take us through your top 10 picks?
Sure. I also want to add in here that we preface this by saying these are for point per reception leagues. So it's very valuable to get a point, even as a running back, for a point per reception. So our rankings are based upon that scoring system, and so I'll give you my top 10 based upon that. Number 10, I have Willis McGahee, now with Baltimore. Number 9, Reggie Bush. Number 8, Willie Parker. Number 7, Frank Gore. Number 6, Larry Johnson. Number 5, Lawrence Maroney. Number 4, Joseph Adai. Number 3, Brian Westbrook. Number 2, Steven Jackson. And number 1, yes, you guessed it, LaDainian Tomlinson. Jason?
That's a surprise number 1 pick again, Jeff.
It is. I went out on a limb on that one, but I think it'll stay true this year. Jason, why don't you give us your top 10?
My number 10 pick is Willis McGahee, same as your number 10 pick. Number 9, I have Lawrence Maroney. Number 8, Willie Parker. 7, Frank Gore. 6, Brian Westbrook. Number 5, I have Reggie Bush. At 4, Joseph Adai. 3, Steven Jackson. 2, Larry Johnson. And 1, Damian Tomlinson.
Jason, tell me why you have Adai and Bush so high on your list.
Sure, Jeff. Adai and Bush are both second-year running backs. They really proved over the last half of last season that they are the number 1 running backs on their team. Granted, Deuce McAllister did have a lot of production in the first half of the season, and as the season progressed, Reggie Bush started catching more passes, started returning punts for touchdowns, just producing at all levels of the game. Similarly, Joseph Adai became the touchdown guy in Indianapolis. Dominic Rhodes was there for most of the year. He's not there this year. And at this point, Joseph Adai looks like the only guy in Indianapolis. He is the main running back for Peyton Manning's system. When they get down to the goal line last year in the AFC Championship game, Peyton Manning had enough confidence in Joseph Adai that he audibled and called a third down running play with Adai, scoring the game-winning touchdown. So obviously, Manning has a lot of confidence in the guy, and I do as well. And Jeff, I see that you have Brian Westbrook picked 3rd on your list. That seems a little high according to some of the fantasy cheat sheets out there. Can you explain why you have him so high?
Yes. I believe that Westbrook is just starting to be utilized correctly by the Philadelphia offense. What I mean by that is, up till now, he's been pretty much a guy out of the backfield, catching passes, getting a lot of points per reception. He also could score some touchdowns out of the backfield, but he really wasn't used in the running game. I believe this year Andy Reid's going to shift a little bit towards the running game, and they have an excellent offensive line in Philadelphia. And I believe he's going to be able to rush for 1,000 yards, possibly receive 1,000 yards, and get 10 touchdowns. And by that addition, that makes him a top 3 running back in fantasy football, and I think he's going to do it this year. So that's why I have Westbrook that high, Jay.
You're very high on the Philadelphia offense. They're in a tough division. We'll have to see how that pans out.
Well, I don't know if they're in that tough division with the New York Giants and the Washington Redskins defenses there. I think they have easy pickings for 4 games a year.
Very good. Let's move on to our sleeper picks. Jeff, you want to go take us through your sleepers and running back?
Sure. My 2 sleepers this year are D'Angelo Williams in Carolina. I believe that he is due for a breakout year with the oft-injured Deshaun Foster as a backup. And also a deep sleeper, which this is not someone I think is going to do well right away, but someone based on possible injury, is Michael Robinson in San Francisco. The backup running back, former quarterback at Penn State. I believe he could be a monster if Frank Gore has any injury issues, which he's had in the past. Jason?
And if I remember right, Michael Robinson did step in last year, one game against Philadelphia, very late in the game when Gore looked like he had a little injury and produced quite well for anybody who happened to have on their bench last year. Nobody was actually using him.
Robinson has elite speed. You don't find that type of speed anywhere. And I think San Francisco uses it, and Gore does get injured. I think Robinson could fill in very well.
Yeah, very good.
Jason, your 2 sleepers?
My number 1 sleeper is Cedric Benson of the Chicago Bears. Now that Thomas Jones is out, he's moved to New York Jets. Cedric Benson is the go-to guy in Chicago. Their offense is a heavily ground-based offense, and I see him producing quite well in Chicago. And my other sleeper is the man I just mentioned, Thomas Jones, moving to a new situation in New York where he's going to be appreciated by his offensive coordinator, appreciated by his teammates, and I think that he can produce quite well under the New York Jets system. Jeff, want to take us through the players that you see dropping this year?
Sure, and some people might ask questions of why I list one of these players. My first player that is going to drop this year is Rudy Johnson. Now, you remember me talking about how high I was on the Cincinnati passing game. I'm also down on the running game. I think it's going to be a pass-happy offense, and for that reason, I think Rudy Johnson is going to drop down from a top 10 running back this year. And my second dropper is Shaun Alexander. I believe Shaun Alexander, his days are past. He was a really good running back in a correct system with a really good offensive line. He doesn't have it anymore. Darrell Jackson's gone. They have no passing game. Everyone's going to key in on that running game, and I think Shaun Alexander is going to suffer. Jason, your two players that you believe are going to drop?
Sure, my two droppers are one from Detroit, Kevin Jones. I feel like Detroit has brought in Tatum Bell to, in essence, challenge Kevin Jones, and I don't think Kevin Jones is up to the challenge. He coming off of an injury last year. Just don't feel like he's able to produce. We saw a couple years ago, he was given a number of goal line chances out at the goal line to score some touchdowns. He just could not punch it in. I don't see him as a factor at all fantasy-wise. And my other pick is Deuce McAllister. I picked Reggie Bush to be a top 5 guy. Therefore, I'm seeing Deuce McAllister drop down. I feel like the coaching staff in New Orleans sees Bush as a much more versatile threat than Deuce McAllister, and they're going to be using him more and more as the season goes on.
Do you think the Houston Texans regret not taking Mr. Bush as their top pick overall last year?
They'll never admit it, but I'm sure they do.
Now we're going to move on to the wide receivers.